Welcome to the Mindset by Design podcast with your host, the expert Andy Murphy, where you will learn the tips, tricks, and strategies he teaches his world-class clients to give you the skills to dominate any business.
What's going on, Mindset by Design crew, and welcome to episode 239. Hope you're awesome as always. Really hope you're doing amazing. I really mean it when I say that. Because if you're listening to this, then you're definitely here for a reason. And you're probably in business, right? Probably are. And what that means is it could have been a roller coaster week. And what do I mean by that? I mean high emotions and low emotions, people letting you down, things changing, adapting, growing, movement, right? And what we've got to realize is we just have to accept that. We do. We have to accept where we are for the simple fact, hey, you listen to this, it means you've got a phone or a computer. Think about that, right? Be so grateful that you even have access to those things. And you might be going, Andy, you've got no damn clue what I've been through this week. Hey, I probably don't. But what I do know is I could probably read all those patterns in your head, and I could tell you how that's affecting the past, the future, your beliefs, everything that's going on in your business, in your life right now. As humans, we're not that complicated. We just get really messy wiring. That's the bones of it. That's the simplicity of it. We get outdated software. And when we really begin to understand that, that is simply software which is making you think, feel, and act a certain way. It's on autopilot. That's the unconscious mind, right? Your nervous system. Once we begin to understand that, it's cool because it means we can change it. And so it doesn't really matter what's going on today or yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow. It's just about what's going on for you right now. And the truth is this. If you're listening to this, like I said before, you're here for a reason. And you're wanting growth. You're wanting change. And what I want to do with this episode today is talk about a different concept. And what that is understanding about creativity. And understanding about the brain with creativity, because, you know, we as entrepreneurs, we live in our imagination. We form businesses from our ideas. And so having creativity is probably the number one tool or skill that needs to be developed. But no one talks about that as in mental performance. No one really talks about the creativity. They talk about the logic, or they talk about feeling good or positive thinking or all this. I shouldn't say it's crap, but it's just outdated. And the thing is, creativity is the number one thing that's brought me to where I am, but it's got me into situations, it's got me out of situations. But having the ability to switch on that creativity and that imagination when you need it, it's so powerful. And that's what I wanted to discuss today, because what I've noticed is that really creativity isn't necessarily about IQ. It's not about intelligence. It's about just being able to come up with ideas or have a different perspective or angle on what's happening. So you could be stuck right now in business. I know this week it's been an interesting week for me, as always. I brought on somebody that I just had to let go, and they didn't perform. They said they could. I paid them money, lots of money, and they just turned out absolute crap. And guess what? It's okay. Is what it is, right? You always have to take responsibility for yourself. And that's the truth, right? If someone's let you down, take responsibility. That's it, right? You can't blame them, because there's other things that you did not do to prepare So make sure they stayed congruent to their word, and that's through detailed contracts, that's through detailed checklists, that's through detailed timelines, that's through, before you even bring them on, making sure that you've really done a solid background check on these people. They've come from referrals, you've seen their work, right? Know what they say they can do. So, parts of that was what happened with me this week, because or the last month, you trust people. And I always trust people, I do. But years ago, I was the opposite. Years ago, I didn't trust anybody. That's what happens when you come from Liverpool. That's what happens when you do an amazing in 2 different countries in investment real estate. That's what happens when you go through bankruptcy and get ripped off, when you're building a massive resort in Fiji, right? So these are traumas and pains that create like weights. And as we walk forwards or move forwards or expand in our thinking and we level up, we've got to understand that these weights neurologically or mind muscle or whatever, software, are still there unless we really, really identify them, work on them. And the challenge always becomes is this. This is the problem with the coaching industry, right? And what I'm about to say. Coaching, therapist, psychologist, whatever you want to call it, right? They're just dealing with the conscious mind. That's talk therapy. It just doesn't work. Well, should I say it doesn't work? Well, if I was talking to you and you were ready to change and you got a different perspective, beautiful, right? But there has to be a lot of technique and skill in that conversation. But the truth is, what really creates the change or it holds on to the damage is the nervous system. Unless we change the neurology or the mind muscle or the software in the brain, right? The bit that's automatic, makes you think, feel, and act, right? Automatically. Unless we change that, it doesn't matter. You're going to be hustling forward with willpower. And that willpower, guess what? It runs out. It gets tiring. It really does. And when we can change that software and we build in the skill set around the mindset, man, that's where businesses blow up. And why am I saying this to you? Because I want to show you a path, give you hope, give you a light at the end of the tunnel. Because as entrepreneurs, we have high-level performance, then we dip. And being able to bounce back, that's the biggest thing, being an entrepreneur. It's not reacting to something. It's when your business is doing well. Hey, everything's easy then, isn't it? But when you dip or something changes in the environment, then you must have a rock-solid software base or rock-solid mindset, whatever you want to call it, mindset by design, That gives you the ability to then see things from a different perspective. And that's where we can introduce creativity, So that's what today's podcast is about. Sound good? I hope so. I just went on a crazy big long rant, didn't I? I really did. Hopefully that helped you. But it's the truth, man. It doesn't matter if you keep banging your head against the wall. All you got to do is step back sometimes and just take a little look to the left, to the right, and be honest with what's going on. Trust your intuition, trust what your experience, and trust, just find the next path because it's probably next to you. But what happens often is we give up, or we get down on ourselves, or we beat ourselves up, or we get stuck. But it doesn't work like that, man. Let's get massively creative and let's bounce back. So, we're going to get into the episode in a second. As I say, I'm keeping these way shorter, aren't I? Way shorter, much easier to help you. And speaking of helping yourself, do you know what? Because I was talking about real estate and all of this before. What I'm doing right now is I'm going to help some real estate people this month. It's my background. It's what I used to love. It's what I was really, really good at selling. And I've helped hundreds of people in real estate. And the challenge with that is the market shifts, you shift, your beliefs shift. And there's moments that you would just on fire, right? But if you have dipped right now, if you've dipped in performance, maybe you're in a dark place, maybe you just spinning in circles, and you know that you want to grow your business in the real estate market, whatever level you're playing at, then listen to this. I'm bringing on 4 to 5 people this month. I don't usually do this, but 4 to 5 people this month, and I'm going to take you all on a massive journey of tuning this into your brain, into the most high performance version of you that you've probably ever been. And think about those moments where you were on fire, where you just closed deals effortlessly, where you were confident, you were happy, you were leaning in, you were going after the business, right? You were helping people get into properties, and this could be commercial, it could be investment, it could be homes. But you know that you used to be fucking amazing, right? Well, what would it feel like to be that version of you again? And then consistently be it, and then see the future and just see the business fully growing, and every day have routines and systems and goals to be able to make sure we maintain this. What would it feel like if you could press a button, a physical button, and you could step into that ultimate version of you? Be brilliant, right? What would happen if you could get control of that self-talk, and instead in the moment it guides you and talks to you and points you in the right direction? What would it be like to get a client and go towards a close, and instead of freezing up or thinking, you absolutely lean in because you know this is the best thing for them? Would it be good? Right. And if that resonates with you and you're dipped right now, then click on the link in the show notes and let's chat, right? I got 4 to 5 places depending on who the people are, and I'm going to change your goddamn world and business. I've done it for myself all over the world. I've done it for tens of thousands of clients, and I've done it for hundreds of people in real estate. I used to set departments up, companies up, work with CEOs. I've done it all in that arena. And now it's time for you to do the same. So hit those show notes, apply, let's connect, let's have a chat, see if we can get on the same page, and let's go and kick ass, okay? Sound good? Beautiful. Why don't you go and do that right now? So, why creative brains are the biggest asset in your business and how to switch them on, right? I love this because there's been so many times, like I said before, that I've just been I've been running into a wall again and again and banging my head. And what's that definition of insanity? You got it, right? Doing the same thing again and expecting a different result. And God, we've all been there, man. We've all been there. And the truth is, what gets us out of the situation is just being able to see a different world, a different view. And often when we're in that stress place, it's hard to be creative. And it's hard to be creative because of something called a cortisone spike, right? So that means your brain gets very cloudy and the stress hormone stops you thinking. So if you're there right now, then hey, keep listening, man. Keep listening, because this is probably what you need to hear today. The real challenge with social media and the way the world is right now, I love social media. I think it's brilliant. I also think it's horrific, right? I think YouTube is amazing. I also think it's horrific. It just depends on your perspective and how you use it. But the truth is, we see all these glimpses of people's lives, and all we see is the success. We only see that it's like a screenshot, a snapshot, right? That's all it is. And is it real? Well, yeah, they're doing those things right there and then. But what no one shows you, it's really rare. They just don't show you the sadness, the tears, the stress, that what it really takes to grow a business. All they're showing you is that glimpse of brilliance, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong with it is it affects us. It affects you, right? It affects you when you look at whatever's going on Instagram or Facebook, and what's showing is just abundance. What's showing is just wealth. And a lot of asses and a lot of abs, right? That's also what's showing. But again, it's the outcome. They're not showing you the 6 months before when they were just lying on the couch sad and then decided to take a lot of steroids and all the rest of it. I'm just teasing, but the point is, it's not really real. And if someone was to have a camera on any successful person, any athlete, any entrepreneur, anybody in any industry, if they were to have like a Truman Show reality camera or Big Brother reality camera blasting on them, everyone would be shocked. Everyone would be shocked at how emotional people can be, because the truth is, even like people like Warren Buffett, they're creative, massively creative. And people think, well, that's just illogical. He's just a numbers guy. Yeah, but guess what? Inside that numbers, you have to be massively creative to stay ahead of the market, find the next angle, see what the bleeding edge or the most cutting edge thing is about to go to, or looking at the trends. This is how it all works. And it's the same with what you're doing right now in your business. The thing is, with these days, things move so fast, and you can let that speed pull you back, or you can allow it to pull you forwards, right? But pulling you forwards has to be towards a vision. It has to be for a bigger purpose. And you might be in the stage like I was, like going back like over a decade ago, where it was about accumulation. It was about, the bling bling, right? And you might be there right now. You might be young and listening to this, and nothing wrong with the bling bling. Go and get it, right? Go and get it. And then you'll have a taste of it. And if you keep evolving and keep listening to Mindset by Design and being around me and all the rest of it, you're going to realize that it's very, very empty. I've seen it at the highest level. I've worked with royalty. I've seen billionaires, clients. And the truth is, it's very interesting. It's very interesting because as human beings, we all have the same fear responses. We all have the same amygdalas. We all have the same chemicals. We all have the same neurology, and it's just patterned together very differently. And what makes someone brilliant in one area of life does not mean that reflects right through to every area of their life, unless they really work on that. So you might be thinking, Andy, aren't we talking about creativity in the brain? What the hell are you on about, mate? So talking about all of these off-point topics. Well, off-point they're not. They all lead to this one place. Whatever you're doing, you have to work at it. You have to build it. And I really believe that's the same with creativity. I really believe that's the same thing with sport. And I believe that's the same with entrepreneurism. I also believe that's the same with your brain. And the more we begin to understand the studies of something like neuroplasticity, which is a neuroscience study showing that the brain adapts and evolves, then what that means is that we can truly create whatever you want. Now, is it going to happen in your timeline? Probably not. It could take way longer. Could be way more simple too. And the reason I say this to you, and the reason I spoke about real estate before, it doesn't have to just be real estate. It can be someone who's dipped and they're ready to bounce back and build their brain into superhuman. Because I really believe that as entrepreneurs, we think differently. We're like artists, or martial artists, right? It's discipline, but it's creativity. And I really believe that we see the world very, very differently. We haven't bought into that bullshit of society. We've done our best to get away from it. And you might have always felt like this. When you were a kid, were you different from the other crowds? Right, I bet you were. Because if you're listening to this and you're part of my gang, then you're definitely thinking differently. And you don't want to be in that box at all. And you might be transitioning from corporate to an online business, or corporate to freedom, or corporate to a physical business, but getting out of corporate. If that's you, we need to have a little chat as well. But let's talk about this topic of creativity and why that is what I really believe is one of the biggest assets that you can have in business and life. So let's listen, right? In the 1960s, a psychologist called Frank X. Barron, he conducted a series of experiments on some of the best and most renowned brains and thinkers of his generation. Now, that's pretty cool, right? We could go back to Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and he kind of did the same, right? But a different way. So what the idea was is he attempted to isolate the unique spark, or what it is that is a creative genius, right? So that's pretty exciting. So in the study, guess what? Barron invited a group of high-profile creators, including Truman Capote, William Carlos Williams, and Frank O'Connor, along with leading architects, scientists, entrepreneurs, mathematicians. And this was the cool thing, right? They all spent quite a few days together living in a former frat house, actually, in the University of California, Berkeley, right? Berkeley campus. And this was really cool because the participants spent time getting to know each other, just hanging out, right? And the researchers were just watching and really completing evaluations of their lives, their work, their personality, including tests that aim to look for signs of mental illness, as well as creative thinking, right? And hey, they say, what's the old saying? There's a fine line between genius and insanity. And you may be right? I think you've got to be a little bit crazy to do the life we do. So imagine how crazy the top people in the world really are, right? Or brilliant, or creative, or whatever you want to call them. But this is the cool bit. The study actually showed that creativity is created with a whole different host of intellectual, emotional, motivational, and even moral characteristics. The common traits that people all across the field seem to have in common were their openness to one's inner life. And they were really introspective. They were complex. They were ambiguous. And what was even more interesting, they were they had usually high tolerance for disorder and disarray, right? Think about that. I don't know whether that's you. I don't know if that's you. But they really did have a high tolerance for disorder and disarray. So chaos, right? But the cool thing was they had the ability to really extract order from this chaos, right? They were independent, they were unconventional, and the willingness to take massive risks. Sounding like you? Right, because when you could really get that, man, it's brilliant, because all of those qualities go into creating creativity. And I really think that creativity is what an entrepreneur, it's like a soup, right? You take a recipe, you've got to have all of these ingredients. And yes, there's definitely the logical side. Yes, there's 100% the analytical side. Yes, there's 100% the willingness and drive and passion and purpose and all of those things, and the belief systems and the attitudes we've got to install, and you being able to bounce back from stuff. But all of this is what creates an entrepreneur. So what I'm adding to the mix is the creativity. And when we understand a lot of different stuff, then Barron wrote that the creative genius was both more primitive and more cultured, more destructive and more constructive, occasionally crazier, yet also saner than the average person. So you don't want to be an average person, do you? No, you want to be you, because you is brilliant. You is more brilliant than you can ever possibly imagine right now. Listen to this, but you are. So if you really start to own that, and you even looked at that little recipe that I just read out, and you related to that, man, then you're in the right place. Because this new way of thinking about a creative genius is so different. Because do you see how, like, highs and lows and radical, right? With the chemicals, and probably people will think we're a little crazy, but the truth is, no, this is what goes into having a creative brain. And in another study that Barron did, and Donald McKinnon found that the average writer was in the top 15% of the population on all measures of psychopathology. By the way, psychopathology is the study of mental disorders. Just so you know, right? But strangely enough, they also found that creative writers scored extremely high on all measures of psychological health. Are you seeing this polarity? Are you seeing this contrast frame? Are you seeing the difference? Right. So, well, it seemed that creative people were more introspective. And I really believe that. Because to be creative, you have to really go inside. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're following someone else's program. But to break rules and to break out that box of the BS of society and do things differently and live by our own life, well, it has to come from inside of us, right? And everyone else in the matrix, in society, well, they're following someone else's program, so there's no real creative thinking there. Even if they are feeling that creative inside a corporate environment, then guess what? That's probably, if you're listening to this and you are in corporate, then how many brilliant ideas have you had that you're not allowed to even implement? But you know they'd be brilliant. You know they'd work. You know they'd help. But, right, you get suppressed. So that's where we've got to break you free so we can allow this genius you to help the world, right? So this led to an increased self-awareness, including greater familiarity with the darker and more uncomfortable parts of ourselves, as well as, guess what? The lighter. And this is a really good thing. So if you're pushing down pain, it doesn't work, man. If it keeps popping up in your head, it means your unconscious mind is ready for you to deal with it and move on. If you're stuck and keep banging against the wall, or you've dipped and you're beating yourself up, whatever it is, and you want to get back on that fast track, then understand we have to go into that complete spectrum. Does that make sense? Because otherwise, it just doesn't work. And it's like a pan of water on the stove. And it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And you can keep turning the heat down, and you can keep turning it up, but that pan is going to boil over, or it's going to run out of water. There's probably another way, right? But the crazy thing is, there's both high and dark, right? There's both light and dark, I should say. This is really interesting because the writers scored high on some of the characteristics that normal society, as I keep talking about, and standard psychology that puts you into a box, right, and ticks it, or a psychiatrist who puts you into a box, ticks those boxes, and then gives you pharmaceuticals, which is fucking messed up. But if they help at the time, brilliant. But it's the addictive problem that's the problem, right? It's not. Anyway, conversation for another time. But what they discovered was these writers, well, they had high characteristics that were associated with mental illness. Well, whose mental illness? Whose characteristics, right? The ones that have been predetermined. You know what I mean? So that's interesting in itself, but this can lead them to become more grounded and self-aware because we have to look more inside. But what these studies are finding is that this may be the precisely why there is an intense and inner drive to create because of this polarity, So you might have heard of this psychologist before. He's the author of the book Flow. His name is awesome. It's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Good name, right? Don't ask me to pronounce that too many times, but that is the correct pronunciation. I checked, right? But what happened is more than 30 years of observing creative people. What he said is, if I had to express one word that makes their personalities different from others, it's complexity. Think about that. They show tendencies of thought and action that most people are not doing. They contain extraordinary extremes. Instead of being an individual, each of them seems to be a multitude. In my world, what I teach, That's about state changing, peak states, alter egos. This is about stepping in to a sale, just not randomly. It's predetermined in the brains, which drops us into a flow state, and we can fire that up. That's the beautiful thing, right? So what psychologists agree that creativity is a multifaceted in nature, and even on a neurological level, they say it's really messy. Well, that's good. But what we don't want is that messiness when we're actually doing a specific skill that we've trained and automated. So that could be in business, stepping into on a stage, closing a deal, doing a business merger, doing a sale. It could be if you're building anything online. It could be sitting down, but logically moving through building that funnel, but also having the creativity to build a webinar or think of different angles or go introspective and look through your avatar's eyes, right? Does that make sense? Now, I'm probably going to tell you something that you might not know. Do you know about the right brain and the left brain? Well, the right brain isn't about just creativity. It's really not. It's really not. Creativity just doesn't involve a single brain region or a side of the brain. What it does is actually the creative process draws on the whole of the brain. It's interplay with many different brain regions, emotions, and our unconscious processing systems. All of that together, man, that's what creates creativity. I'm just going to pause for it. Is this making sense? Am I ranting, or is this making sense to you? Good, I hope so, Because the brain's default network, or we like to call it the imagination network, is particularly important for creativity. Surprise, right? Hey, neuroscience, good names. The default mode network, first identified by neurologist Marcus Rachel in 2001, engages many regions on this inside the surface of the brain, in the frontal, partial, and temporal lobes. Now, what's amazing about this, it appears that we actually spend half of our mental lives using this network. It appears to be the most active when we're engaged in what researchers call self-generated cognition. What the hell does that mean? Let me explain. It means daydreaming. Yeah, daydreaming, letting your mind wander. What do you think I teach and train? Brainwave frequencies, trance. That's how we get access to the software, man. So when we drop you down, I drop you down into the software, what that means is then we can really start to engage the imagination, and we can open up doors and perspectives that you didn't know were there. Then, when we bring you up consciously, we're using that part of the brain. What does that mean? It means you can go and close deals. It means you think about money a different way. It means you think about the past a different way. It means you can see the future, a fully expanded, brilliant, happy, incredible version, right? But if we don't have that imagination, we can get stuck. And if we don't drop you into trance, right, or the daydream state, right, you understand, or the imagination network in the brain, then how are you supposed to create change, right? So if you're just doing talk therapy, please tell me how you're creating change. Makes sense? From my side, makes complete sense. That's why I've been able to get insane results in myself and other people. It's because we're not doing what the old classical outdated knowledge is doing. It doesn't work like that. And that's why I love neuroscience. I just love it so much because it shows evidence, that the mystics have been doing for thousands of years, meditation is going into ceremony and doing psychedelic ceremonies. You know what I mean? It's all about unlocking certain parts of your brain. And hey, we could go deeper if you want to go down the rabbit hole into dimethoxytriptylate, which is the DMT molecule, which is the gateway molecule to potentially our soul. But hey, let's keep that for another time, right? Keep that for another time. So the imagination network doesn't work alone. It engages in really like a dance with the brain's executive network, which is responsible for controlling our attention and working memory. The executive network helps us focus on imagination, blocking out external distractions, and it really allows us to tune into our inner experience, right? So again, we go back to dropping brainwave frequencies from beta to alpha and even deeper into theta, right? And when we can do that, that's where we're engaging everything. That's where you can shut off the outside world and we can really go deep into the visualization. And that's really my secret sauce. And these guided meditations that are out there, they're all right, they'll help, but that's not hypnosis. That's not trance work. It's just not. It's gonna help. I'm not saying it's not gonna help. They help, right? You thinking about imagining anything is gonna help. But when we can really talk to the unconscious mind on a deep, deep level, everything changes so fast. So the creative brain is particularly good at flexibility and activating and deactivating these brain networks, which in most people are at odds with each other. They're constantly, right? We're trying to go inside, but we can't because it's noisy outside. We can't think about things. Why? Because it's because our inner world is going crazy. This is why it's not just the right brain, right? It's far from it. It's far from it. The brain works all at one. And the thing is, it's really cognitive, emotional, deliberate, and spontaneous that allows them to draw on a wide range of strengths, characteristics, and thinking styles of their work. This is really why it's probably hard to pinpoint creative people and why they're able to do this, because it's both creative processes and the brain processes. They bring it together and it really is unexpected. But that's the way we are, right? And that's the way we've got to be. So what's my point to this whole thing? Let's wrap it up today. You're fucking amazing. You're amazing. And it doesn't matter what's happening in your life now. Your imagination will get you out of it. Your imagination will put you into the most incredible world that eventually you will step into as long as you move forwards and take action and have a constant angle of behavioral flexibility. If you get locked onto anything, it has to be done this one way, man, that's what crushed me years ago when I was 27. Because I was so obsessed, and obsession's a good thing. I've done a whole podcast around world-class OCD. YouTube it, Google it. It's there. So you're going to be creative. You're going to look at different angles for income streams. You're going to look at different perspectives over your current situation. You're going to look at different perspectives and be creative of how to communicate with your business partner or somebody. Or maybe you're trying to do a sale right now. Maybe it's going back to that real estate that I was talking about before, where my whole journey began 17 years ago in Sydney in Australia. And maybe that real estate side is right now. Maybe you're trying to get a deal done, but it just doesn't seem to be working. And you keep going, well, this is how I worked before. This is what I know. Well, it's maybe what you knew. But what would happen if you stepped out of your brain, stepped out of this situation, you stepped 12 months into the future, everything was absolutely beautiful. The money, the life, your health, the flow of business. How would you feel? How would you feel? Would it be the way you're feeling thinking about this old situation? Probably not, right? So what would happen if you felt a different way now? What would happen if you saw the future a different way? Money, happiness, excitement, flow, right? Connection. Your business will change and so will your life. So as you get that perspective now, it's time to do something different. It's time to understand that you are incredible. It's time to understand that it doesn't matter where you are. It's just a chapter of your life. It's not who you are. It's just where you are, okay? And when you understand that, when you get that now, then it's just time to do something different. It's time to take action. It's time to get control of your brain, and it's time to get over the pity party, and it's time to level up. Because you are brilliant. Remember that now. Okay, crew. There we go. The end of episode 239. I hope you got something out of that. I hope you gained a different view of the world. I hope you understand how brilliant you are. I hope you understood how the brain really is a brilliant, incredible thing, right? And speaking of brilliant, incredible things, head over to the show notes. There's so many different ways to help you. Make sure that you're inside the incubator group on Facebook. Make sure you found me on Instagram, because I'm constantly doing stories and showing my life and how we do business and everything else. Make sure that you've downloaded the World Class Performer audio. Make sure that you have looked at the 8-Figure Thinker training. And this month, if you're in real estate, do yourself a favor. Let's connect. Hit those show notes, apply, and I will be talking to you very soon. And let's make this year your best year ever. You deserve it. Okay? Until then, you have an incredible, incredible week, incredible day. And, one more thing. Why don't you smile for me?
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy. We'll catch you next time.